Hey peeps, how you doing? So, very exciting day today because there is information about the Giza Plateau which is not online except in a Latin book, which is a Latin translation of Al-Baghdadi. Now, I purchased a 1965. There's two English translations. I've purchased the first one. It's 1965, The Eastern Key, by Al-Baghdadi, translated by Vidian and Zand. And it's got a beautiful 60s dust jacket. And look at this. It's even got a lovely key there, like a lovely key. It's beautiful. And I'm so happy I've got it. And now I'm going to read you pages and pages and pages of information about Giza, which you've never heard before. Because this bloke explored the Giza Plateau and Egypt 800 years ago, when Europe was trying to hold on to the Holy Land and just getting pushed out of the Holy Land. This guy was exploring the Giza Plateau and writing about it. We've got the Arab and we've got the English version, and he writes this huge book all about Egypt, and there's a whole chapter about the ruins and Giza. So this is some new information. There's a lot in here. He says, just perusing roughly now, he says Memphis, to walk across the ruins of Memphis, the capital, takes half a day. He says there's 10,000 pages of writing on the Giza pyramids. Giza is a very different place back then. So we're just going to read and a few reactions to what he has to say. So let's get cracking. And this will probably be broken up into several parts. There's quite a lot. So a bit of an introduction to this fellow. Just a very quick introduction. He's well known to Orientalists and students as one of the greatest medieval philosophers and scientists, particularly of medicine. And he lived from AD 1162 to AD 1231. So that tells you what's going on. So think about what's happening in Europe at that time. We don't even have the printing press. So we actually don't really know what's happening really in Europe at that time. A lot has not survived, especially Central Eastern Europe. A lot of that history is kind of blank. Even English history. Let me give you an example. The first popular and accessible biography of Henry III, who lived in this time, has only just been published. Never heard of Henry III? He ruled England for 60 years. I bet you didn't know that. Why? Because not much information from this period has survived. But Robin Hood was also in this time. Let's get cracking. Chapter 4. So let's see how we're going to do this. Let's make it big writing for you. Description of the antique monuments seen in Egypt by the author. Of all the countries I have visited or known by report of others, there are not any can compare with Egypt for its antiquities. I will say only about the wonders that I saw. The pyramids are one of the wonders. They have engaged the attention of a multitude of writers who have given in their works the description and dimension of these edifices. They are numerous, and all of them situated in the province of Giza, on the same line as the ancient capital of Egypt. Oh, Lee line. Or north-south line like the Duke line. And are comprised within the space of 2 days' journey. At Busir, that's Ozir, I think, there are many. Some of the pyramids are large, others small. Some are formed of earth and brick, but most of them of stone. So he's talking about the earth and brick will be the Middle and New Kingdom, the Middle Kingdom pyramids. A new dynasty arrived of invaders or Egyptians and tried to build new pyramids, and they just couldn't do it. Didn't last long. Some of them are constructed in the form of steps or stairs. Mostly, however, they are an exact pyramidal shape with smooth surfaces. So even then, pyramid was a type of shape, as it is today. Formerly, There was a great number of pyramids, small indeed at Giza, but these were destroyed in the time of Salah ed-Din Yusuf ibn Ayyub. Their ruin was effected by Karakush, a Greek eunuch and one of the emirs, that's admirals, a man of genius. To him was entrusted the superintendence of the buildings of the capital, and he it was who built the stone wall which surrounds Fostat and Cairo, the space between the two towns, and the citadel on Mount Muqattam. So Mount Muqattam is where they got the very white granite for the casing stones. So it's called a mountain back then, you see. You don't hear that anymore. He likewise constructed this citadel and dug the 2 wells which are found today. These wells themselves are reckoned among the wonders of Egypt. They are descended by a staircase of nearly 300 steps. The arches at Giza, which still stand today, were built with the materials of the small pyramids he caused to be demolished. They are structures worthy of admiration and vie with the works of the giants. There were at one time more than 40 of these arches, but this year, the 597th of the Hejra, the care of the arches being entrusted to a rash and ignorant man, he had them filled up, flattering himself that by this means the waters stopped by their course as by a dam would spread over the territory of Giza and allow it to participate in the advantages of the inundation. The result of the experiment was adverse. The stress of the waters on the arches was so great that 3 of them broke and gave way, without any benefit to the lands which this man expected to improve by the flood. Part of the pyramid so ruined by Karakush, that is to say the kernel and interior of these edifices, is still visible, being the rubble and small stones of no utility. In the structure of the arches, of which I have spoken, they were left on the spot. As to those pyramids, the object of so many recitals, to which I shall now advert, pyramids distinguished above the rest, the superior size of which excites admiration. The number of them is 3, and they stand in a line at Giza in front of Fostat at a short distance apart, their angles pointing to each other and towards the east. 2 of these pyramids are of enormous dimensions and the same size. The poets who have described them have given the rein to that enthusiasm. They are so well calculated to inspire. They compare them to 2 immense breasts rising from the bosom of Egypt. They are very near to each other and are built of white stone. The third one, a 4th part less than the others, is of red granite marked with points. Now there is a footnote. Dr. Dussacy says, it seems that at the time Abd al-Latif composed his work with the 3 great pyramids, all of them had their external coat entire, which caused him to conclude that the 3rd pyramid was constructed wholly of red granite from Elephantis Island opposite Aswan. So there you go. So it was totally covered. He believed it was totally covered with red granite, not just at the bottom. That's the coloured pyramid. Okay, let's continue. And so extremely hard that iron takes a long time, with difficulty to make an impression on it. The last one appears small compared with the other 2, but viewed at a short distance, to the exclusion of these, it excites the imagination. In the imagination, a singular oppression, and cannot be contemplated without painfully affecting the sight. The shape chosen for the pyramids and their solidity are alike admirable. To their form is owing the advantage of their having resisted the attack of centuries. They stay continuously against time, and time patiently waits on them. In fact, after mature reflection on the structure of the pyramids, one is forced to acknowledge the combination of efforts of the most intelligent men, an exhaustion of the genius of the most subtle, that the most enlightened minds exercised with profusion in favour of these edifices all the talents they possessed, and that the most learned theory of geometry called forth the whole of its resources to show in these wonders the utmost term of human ability. We may likewise affirm that these structures held a discourse with us even in the present day, respecting those who were their founders, teach us their history in a manner intelligible to all, relate their progress in the sciences and the excellence of their genius, and in short, effectually describe their life and news. The most singularly remarkable fact presented by these edifices is the pyramidal form adopted in their structure, a form which commences with a square base and finishes in a point. Now, one of the properties of this form is that the centre of gravity is the centre of the building itself, so that it leans on itself supports the whole pressure of this mass, all the parts bear respectively upon one the other, and it does not press on any external point. Another admirable peculiarity is the disposition of the square of them in such a manner that each of their angles fronts one of the four winds. For the violence of the wind is broken when cut by an angle, which would not be the case if it encountered a plane surface. To return to the two huge pyramids, those who have taken their dimensions pronounce the base, and this is the same in Diodorus, by the way, people, to be 400 cubits long by as many broad, and their perpendicular height likewise 400 cubits, the cubits used in the mensuration being the black cubit. Their pyramidal shape as truncated above, and presents at the summit a level of 10 cubits square. Of the following fact, I was myself an eyewitness when I visited them. We had an archer in our company who shot an arrow in the direction of the perpendicular height of one of these pyramids, and another in that of its breadth at its base, and the arrow fell at about a middle of this space. We are told that in the neighbouring village there were people accustomed to mount to the summit of the pyramids and who effected it without difficulty. We sent for one of these men who for a trifle ascended one of the pyramids in the same manner. That, and even quicker than we should do a staircase, and without taking off his shoes or his dress, which was very wide. I desired him on attaining the summit to measure with his turban the breadth of this level. When he came down, we ascertained the portion of his turban which corresponded with that of the level to be 11 cubits of the natural measure. A man skilled in the art of measuring, whom I saw ascribe to this pyramid a perpendicular height of about 317 cubits, and to each of the sides of the four triangular planes which incline to this perpendicular 460 cubits. I think there must be some error in these measurements, and the perpendicular height must be 400 cubits, but if I have opportunity and God helps me, I will measure it myself. One of these pyramids is opened, and has an entrance by which the interior may be penetrated. This opening leads by narrow passages to conduits extending to a great depth, to wells and precipices. According to the testimony of individuals bold enough to enter, for many excited by desperate cupidity and by delusory expectations have ventured into the interior of this building. They explored its deepest cavities and finally arrived at a spot beyond which it is impossible to advance. As for the passage, the most frequented and that which is commonly allowed, it is by a slope which leads towards the upper part of the pyramid, where it is a square chamber containing a sarcophagus of stone. The opening by which the pyramid is now entered is not a door formed at the period of its erection, but a hole excavated with great trouble and directed by chance, the making of which is ascribed to Caliph Mamun. And that's the footnote says that's of the 9th century AD, the son of Harun al-Rashid. Most of our company entered this opening and ascended to the chamber in the upper part of the pyramid. On their return, they talked of the wonderful things they had seen, that the passage was so full of bats and their ordure as to be almost closed, that the bats were as large as pigeons, and that in the upper part openings were seen and windows, designed apparently for the admission of air and light. Now that could those could be the shafts. They could be the pyramid shafts. So for air and light to enter. Although it doesn't seem to say whether or not the light is being seen entering the pyramid. On the second visit, I myself, and with others, entered the interior conduit and penetrated about 2/3 of its length, but losing consciousness owing to the terror I experienced in the ascent, I returned half dead. Okay, so he's a bit of a wimp, this guy. Okay, so that's all right. These pyramids are built of large stones between 10 and 20 cubits long by a breadth and thickness each of 2 to 3 cubits, but most especially worthy of admiration is the extreme nicety with which these stones are fashioned and disposed one above the other. The courses fit so exactly that not even a needle or a single hair can be thrust between the joints. They are cemented together by a mortar. Oh, so there is a mortar, which forms the thickness of a leaf of paper. So there is mortar. But other authors say there is no mortar. With the composition of this mortar, I am totally unacquainted. The stones are covered with writing in these ancient characters of which the meaning is now unknown. I have met with no one in Egypt who either knew it himself or had ever heard of any person by whom it was comprehended. So numerous are these inscriptions that were only those to be copied which are found on the surface of these two pyramids, they would fill about 10,000 pages. Right. He seems to be saying there's writing inside as well, because he says, so numerous are these inscriptions that were only those to be copied which are found on the surface, it would take. So he seems to be indirectly saying there's writing on the inside. And it's full of writing. Because if we only took what's on the surface, it would be 10,000 pages. Do you see what he's saying? What do you think he's saying there? Tell me in the comments. But that seems to be what he's saying. There's writing all over. There is writing all over the pyramids. And that might be what Khufu did to them. He chiseled writing all over them rather than building them. Because we know that megalithic structures don't have writing on them, don't we? Okay. In some of the books of the ancient Sabaeans, I have read, so the Sabaeans are the Arabs. I have read that of these two pyramids, one is the sepulchre of Agadimun, the other of Hermes. Now, this is similar to what Diodorus told us. Diodorus gave us 3 kings, and the third one was Enochi, which I suppose is Enoch, so which is Hermes. But he's saying the first one is Agadimun, the second is Hermes, the Khafre pyramid. These, according to this authorities, were 2 great prophets, but Agadimun is the more ancient and the greater of the 2. They further assert that these 2 pyramids were visited eagerly by pilgrims from all countries of the earth. On this subject I have treated at large in my great work and have related what others have said of these buildings. To that, therefore, I refer the reader solicitous of more minute details, confining myself in this to the representation of that alone which I have myself been witness. Upon the succession of Malik al-Aziz Othan ben Yusuf to the throne of his father, he allowed himself to be persuaded by certain friends belonging to his court to demolish these pyramids. He began with the Red Pyramid, and by the way, this is about the time he's in Egypt. No. Yeah, it's about the time he's in Egypt, I suppose. So while he's there, they're starting to trying to demolish the pyramids. He began with the Red Pyramid, the last and least desirable of the 3. Hither the Sultan dispatched drillers, stonecutters, and ropers under the conduct of some of the principal officers and emirs of his court, with orders for its destruction. Right. Apparently they pitched their camp near the pyramid, where they collected from every quarter a vast number of workmen who were maintained at a prodigious expense. Here they remained for the space of 8 months with their horses, occupied wholly in putting into effect the commission, with which they were entrusted, removing every day after oppressive labour and almost utter exhaustion of the strength of those employed, at most but 1 or 2 stones. Some were appointed with wedges and levers to force them forwards, while others with cords and cables pulled from the bottom. When at length one of the stones fell, it occasioned a tremendous noise which resounded at a vast distance, shook the very earth, and made the mountains tremble. In its fall it buried itself in the sand, and it required extraordinary efforts to disengage it, after which notches were wrought for receiving wedges, by which means of these the stones were split into several pieces, each of which employed a wagon for its transport to the foot of the mountain, situated a short distance away, where it was left. In other words, they're creating a small mountain of rubble nearby. A stone flies off the pyramid, which they manage to get off the pyramid, and then they need to break it up into small pieces just to move it. After remaining long encamped on this spot, and expending all their pecuniary means as their toil and fatigue continually increased, while, on the contrary, their resolution diminished daily, and their strength became exhausted, those of the commission were forced, shamed, and censured to abandon the undertaking. So far from obtaining the promised success and accomplishing their design, all they did was spoil the pyramid and exhibit a manifest proof of their inability and failure. This occurrence took place in the year 593 of the Hijra, that is 1196 AD. So this is when King Richard is in the Holy Land. They are doing this to the Menkaure pyramid. And this is about the time King John starts to take over in England. Now, when the mass of stones collected in this demolition is contemplated, one feels disposed to consider the pyramid ruined to its foundation, but on looking to the other hand at the pyramid, it seems as if it had suffered no injury, a part of its case on one side only having been detached. Witnessing one day the extreme difficulty experienced in dragging down a single stone, I addressed one of the foremen who superintended the work. So they are there when he's in Egypt. This is when he's in Egypt. And questioned him whether if 1,000 dinars were given him to replace one of the stones in the position it was before, he thought himself competent to the undertaking. His answer was that if he were offered that sum many times over, he would never be able to accomplish the task, and this he affirmed with an oath. So the workmen in Egypt are not up to the challenge of building a pyramid 800 years ago. In front of the pyramids on the eastern bank of the Nile is seen a number of immense and very deep excavations communicating one with the other, of which several are of 3 stories. What's he talking about? He must be talking about the pyramid, the shafts. The boat shafts? Were they open at the time? The name by which they are known is the town. A man on horseback with his lance erect may enter them and make excursions for a day together without having traversed the whole. So numerous and vast are they, and of such great extent. So it looks like there's a underground city next to Giza? Is that what he's saying? Or this is the quarry. Could this be the quarry? Tell me in the comments. I don't know what he's talking about. It is easy in these to recognize the quarries. Oh, okay. Whence the stone was drawn, which served for the structure of the pyramids. Okay, so the quarries are right there. As for the quarries whence the red granite was taken, they are said to be situated at Kozom and at Aswan. Near these pyramids are yet visible the remains of ancient gigantic edifices and a number of subterranean cavities of solid structure, and seldom is any part of them to be found without inscriptions in the ancient but now unknown characters. A little more than a bowshot from these pyramids is a colossal figure of a head and neck projecting from the earth. The name of this is, that's Father of Terrors, the Sphinx. And the body to which the head pertains is said to be buried under the earth. To judge from the dimensions of the head of those of the body, its length must be more than 70 cubits. On the face is a reddish tint and a red varnish as bright as if freshly put on. So this is apparently in the New Kingdom. Someone painted the Sphinx red for some reason. The face is remarkably handsome, and the mouth expresses much grace and beauty. One might fancy it's smiling gracefully. So there's fresh red paint on it, basically. So it's got a Mona Lisa smile. That's interesting. A sensible man, inquiring of me as to what of all I had seen in Egypt had most excited my admiration. I answered, the nicety of proportion in the head of the Sphinx. In fact, between the different parts of this head, the nose, for example, the eyes and the ears, the same proportion is remarked, as to be observed by nature in her works. Thus the nose of a child is suitable to its structure and proportioned to the rest of its frame, while if it belonged to the face of a full-grown man, it would be reckoned a deformity. So it's a childlike face, he's saying. The nose of a grown man on the visage of a child would equally be a disfigurement. The same holds good with respect to all the other members. There are none but should have a certain form and dimension in order to bear relation to such a face. Where the proportions are not observed, the face is spoiled. Hence the wonder that in a face of such colossal size, the sculptor should have been able to preserve the exact proportion of every part, seeing that nature presented him with no model of a similar colossus or any at all comparable. Now, I'm wondering, reading that, and considering it was different, it was painted red, are we looking at the same structure? Because he's really taken with this face. He really likes this face. And this sort of thing has never occurred to me in looking at that face, this sort of wonder. So I'm actually really wondering, are we looking at the same Sphinx? Or has the face changed? Among the monuments of antiquity in Egypt, there must be comprised that which are seen at Ain Shems, a small town surrounded by a wall, still visible, though demolished. Is that the end of the chapter? No. It is readily seen that these ruins belong to a temple. Here are found frightful and colossal figures in hewn stone, 30 cubits long, the members of which all bear a just proportion. Of these, some are upright on pedestals, others seated in various singular postures and in perfect order. The gate of the town is yet subsisting. Most of the stones at this place are covered with figures of men and other animals, and with a multitude of inscriptions of an unknown character. Scarcely a stone is found but bears either an inscription or some object engraved or pictured. In this town are found the two obelisks so much celebrated, called the two needles of Pharaoh. They consist of a square base 10 cubits in every way, of nearly an equal height, resting on a solid foundation in the earth. From this base arises a square column of pyramidical form, 100 cubits in height, to which the base is about 5 cubits in diameter and terminates at a point. The summit is covered with a kind of copper cap in the shape of a funnel, which descends about 3 cubits from the apex. So I'm wondering, lots of these were taken to Europe. I guess this could be the one in the Vatican, maybe, or who knows. The copper from the action of rain and the lapse of years is eroded with verdigris, and a portion of the green verdigris has run down the needle of the obelisk. The whole structure of the obelisk is covered with the same kind of writing of which I have before mentioned. I saw one of these two obelisks which had fallen, which was broken in 2 pieces by the fall owing to its excessive weight. The copper which had covered the top had been taken away. Around these obelisks is an innumerable multitude of others. These are but half or a third of the height of the larger. Among these small obelisks, few are seen formed of a single stone. The major part are of several pieces, one upon the other, the chief of them having been thrown down, but those of the bases remain in their place. And he goes on and on. And what I propose to do is to end that video here, because I think he goes back to the pyramids later, but he goes on and on and on, and we can put this into a second video. He goes on about Memphis, which is not too far from Giza. So let's save that for part 2, okay? So let's stop. I'm going to put a little post-it note here. And let's stop there. He starts talking about Alexandria. Okay, see you in the next video. Cheers.